Hey everyone, welcome to the 16th episode of the Coffee with Cosmos DB series. If you have missed to join the last session, you can watch the recording, which is under a playlist Coffee with Cosmos DB series. If you would like to know more about a particular feature or a customer story, please cast in the chat so that we can take it up and discuss here. If you're joining this live session for the first time, this series is all about spreading the knowledge on Cosmos DB by the experts to the community. So please make sure to subscribe the channel and share with the community members who are looking to learn more about Cosmos DB. Yeah, if you're interested to present or have any feedback, please reach out to me. And thanks for all the support and feedback so far. With that, let me introduce our guest for today. Hi, Nagraj.
Hi team.
Yeah,
Thanks,
today we
Saji.
have one of the cloud solution architect from the data and AI team joining us, who's working closely with the customers. So please go ahead and introduce yourself, Nagraj.
Hello team. Hello everyone. So I'm Nagraj, as Saji said. So I'm a cloud solution architect working for Microsoft. So very happy to be presenting this session in Coffee with Cosmos DB. So just a bit about myself. So I have been working around data space for over 15 years now. So I'm working in around SQL Server and data and AI space for all along. And initial days, I started off with SQL Server, very interested in community related activities. So I used to run the user group in Singapore. But I'm, by the way, based out of Singapore. So and I became a Microsoft MVP, and then subsequently joined Microsoft, and then working with all the services around data and AI space in Azure. So I have also written a book on Azure data engineering. So yeah, so that's and
It's
I
glad.
love
I mean,
working. Yeah,
yeah, it's good to know the stuff which I haven't heard about you before. So I mean, you have been actively contributing to the community in the past, and this is the
yeah.
first time we are having a MVP as well in the show. So it's great to have you here. Yeah.
Oh, thanks a lot, thanks a lot. Yes. So as Saji actually initially mentioned, so he was talking about the community. I am from the community originally. First, I'm from the community, and I love that this initiative where Saji and team is trying to put all this content so that you can go back and and learn directly from the product team or people from Microsoft and from the community as well. Okay, thanks a lot. So,
Yeah,
something.
today's topic is going to be very interesting to many of the audience. I mean, many of us who are joining to learn about Cosmos DB, because this would be applicable for developers as well as customers. I think one of the fundamental thing that we would like to know about, like troubleshooting and monitoring. And I think Nagraj will be taking us through the fundamentals as well as how to, um, like use this in your production or like dev test environment so that you can leverage and identify what are the issues that you're facing and troubleshoot. Yeah. Without a further ado, I will hand it over to you, Nagraj. You can take it on.
Thanks, Sati. Yep. So as Saji actually briefly gave a or introduction to the topic. So today we are going to talk about Cosmos DB's monitoring capabilities, or what are the things that you need to monitor. So more often than not, as you know, Cosmos DB is a pretty critical service where you're expecting sub-second responses, and where the uptime and the response and the performance is of utmost importance, which obviously means monitoring plays a vital role. So in this particular session, what I want to talk about is around around Cosmos DB monitoring, specifically why do you monitor, what to monitor, and how to monitor. So let's probably get started. What are the motivations for monitoring Cosmos data? Most of us know that it is a NoSQL engine, lightning fast. It is gives you very quick response times and so on. So first thing is resource utilization. So as I said, and performance is of utmost importance, and we want to know how are we using it, be it the storage, be it the throughput, or any other aspect of the resource. Know the resource utilization, and then you want to optimize it as well. You want to understand if something is not going exactly the way in which you are expecting it to happen, then you want to change, fine tune it, and so on. Know about the availability. It comes with SLAs which are financially bound. So it is one of those services which has SLAs, very strong SLAs is, and and tracking the availability is of utmost importance for us to ensure or prevent downtime. Latency analysis, Cosmos DB, as you know, it is a service where you can have accounts across different regions. It can help you support out your application if it is distributed across different geographic locations. So latency analysis would be something around um, how the replication performance is actually happening between multiple copies of Azure Cosmos DB account or database. Scaling, whether do you want to scale? So one of the coolest things about Cosmos DB is the ability to scale. You have features like provision, where you give it certain threshold, and as when you need, you give it more horsepower or more RUs, right? So for you to scale the throughput, or you have stuff like auto scale, where it can automatically scale up to a certain limit, up to a limit that you set. It can scale from minimum to maximum depending upon your workload. It is very useful when your workload actually goes up and down. Finally, you also have stuff like serverless, where it can just simply scale depending upon how your workload is going, right? So having that understanding, whether which mode works for you really well, to know the and taking those decisions, right? So monitoring obviously plays a very important role. Further down, we monitoring works at two layers. One is at the account level and also at the query level, or at specific request level. So you identify that these are the um, this is the particular collection, or this is the particular database that is actually having the performance issue. Subsequently, you want to drill in to fine tune the queries. Those things also we need to monitor. Capacity planning, obviously, you want to monitor to effectively find out how your workload trend is, and then plan for future workload that may come your way. Cost optimization, that is also a very crucial aspect when it comes down to Cosmos DB, simply because you pay depending upon how much your workload is consuming, how many RUs is it consuming, especially if you have something like auto scale and so on, or serverless and so on. You pay depending upon on how much you are using. It has that capability to automatically scale up or scale down. So what it also means is you need to monitor it so that you could optimize is the overall usage effectively, to identify which workloads need, for example, to identify which workloads need to go to provisioned, or where you can provision certain amount of RUs, and which workloads require auto scale and so on, and which are the poor performing queries, so that I can optimize which actually will result in cost optimization and so on. Security and compliance that is again auditing plays a very important role, and also things like looking for any kind of attacks that may come your way on against Cosmos DB. To track all that, and that is also, and of course, configuring alerts and notifications. And to any of these would ideally like to configure alerts and be notified when something happens. So I think we have enough motivation, right? to monitor. That was more to set the stage. So, uh, so why monitor? But what to monitor? What are the things that you can monitor? So you have activity log, Azure metrics, and diagnostic logs. I'll go through each one of them. So these are the key aspects you'll be focusing on, and let's get into each one of them. So activity log is the stuff that you do on the Azure portal. So things like I make a change on my account on the Azure Cosmos DB account. It is not the stuff that you do inside the database via query. You go and update a document and so on. But it is more of the stuff that you do like I go and rotate a key, I add another replica, I scale up, I drop a container, and so on. So it is at a resource level. So what are the things that are done? If I may just quickly switch my screen and go over to so so you have activity log out here. Oh, sorry, I'm looking into the log analytic workspace. Apologies. So reading a key. So I added up, I listed the key, reader key, all these kind of initiated by whom, and all these are found out here. So in addition to these, you also get any recommendations, Microsoft Advisor recommendations. So it tells us things like for example, let's check out what's so security recommendations sometimes come through, like review the configuration of your Azure Cosmos DB free tier account. So one of the cost optimization, whether I can leverage free tier. So in a subscription for a single account, that is, you have something called free tier, which can cover up to 1,000 RUs. So leveraging that is given as a recommendation and so on. So you also get recommendations through this, which you could also monitor. If I delete a container, that gets listed as well. So this is something that you could monitor, and you could configure alerts as well. So you can out of here you can from from you could monitor through this, and via log analytics you can configure alerts too against some of these events. Okay, I will probably talk about it. So I will talk how this can be saved to log analytics. Probably we can do that right away as well. So you have so you have Azure Log Analytics out here. Scroll down. Diagnostic settings over here. So control plane requests. So whatever requests that are done at the control plane. So you have two planes. One is the data plane, which is about what happens inside the Cosmos DB database, whereas you have control plane which talks about all these all these activity log related stuff. So you could check this, and you could either put it inside a Azure Data Lake storage account, stream to an event hub, or you can link it to Log Analytics workspace as well. So Azure Log Analytics workspace is your, your monitoring service that we have, or yeah, or how commonly used for, I would probably say commonly used for monitoring use cases. This particular service is capable of collecting the logs, storing it in, and you could run KQL queries, question queries against that to to get the data out of it. We'll look into those little later in the session. Yeah. So, what are the key things that you may want to monitor? Key rotation. If somebody is messing around with your keys, right? So it makes sense to 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 track stuff like key rotation, changing firewall settings. So, if somebody is making any kind of change to network related settings, adding a replica, so dropping a container, any other security alerts. You also have the category in this line. So could you could track security alerts as well through this. Advisor recommendations. All of these probably are, it is worthwhile configuring an alert so that you know when these actually happen. Okay. Uh, any questions, Saji?
Yeah, there is a question on the chat. Let me highlight, but that is not related to the content that you shared, I guess. But yeah, how do
Okay.
we track the user or application query which has resulted in high RUs?
Okay. So one user or an application. Mm, One way possible is if you, well, probably we can look into that when we touch upon the
Yep,
log analytics. So yeah.
yep, sure. Okay. Yeah, that's the only question that we had on the chat. You can
Yeah.
proceed.
So so that is more around what happens inside at the account level, or via the Azure portal, or or at a subscription level related to Cosmos DB. Now let's get down to the next level, which is what is happening on Azure Cosmos DB's health and usage. So you have Azure Monitor, uh, which, like, and most of you, if you are familiar to Azure, you would already know that you have Azure Monitor for almost all the you have it for all the services. It gives you the fundamental metrics that are required to track how your service is actually doing. Right. So you have, let's probably, these are stuff that is obvious. So perform. Let's probably look into these. Uh, so let's go to look into Azure Monitor and actually go through these stuff. So it covers throughput, response metrics. We will go through it from the monitor itself. Should be a lot more interesting. So when it comes to, you have under monitoring, you have the insights view, and then the metrics classic view, and then the metrics. So all of these use Azure data collected in Azure Monitor. So let's probably get started with the insights view. Okay. So if you observe over here these tabs, which indicate the key things that one needs to monitor: throughput, in terms requests. Throughput is how much are you percentage are we consuming. Requests is how much requests are coming through. Storage, how, how much are we using. Availability around system, the Cosmos DB availability, latency, replication latency, and so on. Okay, so this insights view is very cool because you could customize this particular view. So you could click over here, create create a additional tile, or set a filter depending upon how you need it. unlike the classic one, which doesn't have that option. That is one key difference. Okay, let's look into each one of these. So if you let's start from the overview page itself. Okay. So this is, let me do this for say last 12 hours. Maybe we'll go up to last 7 days by default. So you could see a spike over here. So which tells us like which tells us is that there was a bit of a spike on normalized RU consumption. We'll talk about this shortly. Okay, total request and so on. So let's get into throughput. So what is throughput? So it tells us how much percentage of your capacity are you using. Okay. So it tells me like if I have provision 1000 RUs, how much am I using? How much percentage have I used at that particular time? So on this, it is important to look at this at at a at a container level and probably even at a partition level. So let's take one of them. Okay. So why? Because the RU I have provisioned is usually at a container level. Sometimes it can be at a database level. If it is at a database level, it is shared across the containers that are there in the database. For simplicity's sake, let's take it as it is at a container level. The RUs I have provisioned for a database is or for a container will be shared equally among all the physical partitions that are there inside that particular container. So looking into the consumption percentage and then looking into how it is being used at each partition is very important. Over here, I just have one partition. In this particular case, is so it appears as 100%, but giving you that idea that you should be focusing on at a partition level via this visual over here. So ideally, had I had multiple partitions, you would be seeing multiple color codes over here, and you will be looking at the one that is having 100%. Okay, so this is with regards to throughput. Next important item which I would like to focus is on requests. Okay, so over here, so okay, yeah, over here, let me just take it back up by a bit. So So the request is talking about number of requests that are coming in, total number of requests. But one important thing to note is looking into it by status code. So what is the status code? It tells what was the response from Cosmos DB for that particular request. Let me just this one doesn't give that. Okay, the list of never mind. So for a moment, let me just go to. Okay, I was looking for this numbers. Okay, so you see, we can see the same data. Now I'm just switching to classic to showcase something. Data for last. Let's just go with last 7 days. So there is some data out here. So if you see here, what we get to see is the various response codes. So each of these have certain implication. So Typically, just to give you a very high level overview, I'll be getting into the details of around this shortly. So HTTP 200 series uh, means the request was successful. 400 series means there was some issue. Either it could be related to the application or it could be related due to performance and so on. And 500, most likely there may be an outage on Cosmos DB itself. So what you would ideally want to do is yes, I have given. I'll be sharing this slide deck so you can go through this. So looking into things like what are the key ones that you may so not authorized forward, and these are fairly straightforward ones. Probably HTTP 429. So when you see this number, it is the most common one that you may encounter in around Cosmos DB. When you look at this, what it implies is you are facing some throttling issue. So what it implies is this particular at that particular time, the number of requests that you got is well over what you have provisioned for that particular container. It could be because there may be too many requests coming to that same partition, or it could be or it could be the case of there were too many queries at the against against, or there may be one single massive heavy query which is just significantly consuming and so on, or lots and lots of RUs and so on. So when you see 4 to 9, the recommendation is try to identify, is it a hot partition. Hot partition is the case where your one particular partition is heavily flooded, but with number of requests, and try to see if it is something unusual. So the typical immediate workaround, more often than not, can be to scale up. But ideally what you should be doing is to look into that particular query, if it is querying the right partition, if it is using the partition key correctly, or or you may need to realign your partition strategy to avoid such a issue. So in the interest of time, I won't go into each one of these codes, but 4 to 9 is something you may want to monitor. 500, 503, those are also stuff you may want to monitor for any kind of outage and so on. Okay. So next up, what do you want to ideally you want to monitor is Saji, and do we have a hard limit to finish at 6:30 my time or 4 p.m. India time, or is it okay if we extend by say 10 minutes?
Yeah, we can go ahead.
Okay. Okay. So we were, and then when it comes down to storage, sometimes when it comes down to storage, so as you know, containers are split into partitions. Logical partition capacity is 20 GB. So it is important to monitor if any of your partitions are actually hitting that particular limit. So one way of doing that is through over here. So and then when it comes down to availability, you may want to monitor if Cosmos DB is available. So is available and up and running. Those percentages are given over here. Finally, latency as well. So as you know, Cosmos DB uh, gives you SLA driven latency timing, server side latency timings in terms of how quickly you can get a response, right? So you have those, you have sub generally below 10 milliseconds is considered to be a very strong uh, it considered to be fairly good response times in direct connection. So you could monitor that over here. Gateway connection, it can be higher than that, and those numbers are also given over here. One another thing which I wanted to talk about, which I missed out, was so on when we are talking about uh, monitoring requests. So another important thing that you need to look into is, for example, you identify throttling and other. One thing that you may want to pay attention to is what kind of request that is coming through. So is it more reads, more writes? It's read or executing a stored prog or a query and so on. So those numbers are given by operation type, right, over here. Okay, so now, as I said, all of these can also be seen from Cosmos DB, from metrics page as well. You have insights, you have metrics classic, and you have this where you can go in and probably monitor it over here to build a dashboard out of this and save it to your dashboard, and you could configure alerts on top of it as well. For example, let's say normalized RU consumption. If I want to configure an alert saying that each time it goes to something like 100%, I could do that over here, or it goes over 95%, and split it by an additional dimension as well, say something like a partition and so on. And then we could evaluate, and then we could create an action group, and action group is a group of email addresses or bunch of people whom you want to notify. Or you can even call something like a webhook and a few other. You could route it to something like ITSM, your incident management tool, and so on. You could do a few other stuff too. So so that is around the metrics piece. You could, by default, it is 7 days of retention. You could save it for a longer period through the diagnostic settings over here. So you have under metrics, you could save these over through these as well. So all this data can be stored inside log analytics or storage account. Okay, before I go over to log analytics, any questions, Saji?
Yeah, I see a few questions on the chat. We can take it right now, or once you complete, we
Yeah,
can.
that's okay. We can take it.
All
If
right.
you could.
Yeah. The first one is what is the retention of data in the activity log?
Yeah. Okay. Activity log, 90 days over here. Azure activity log, but metrics is 7 days. So either ways, I would strongly vouch retaining it in some place for auditing and so on.
All right.
Next, yeah.
Next one is around. Can we also see the data usage per physical partition?
Yeah. So physical partition, anyways, yeah, could you could see that as well through here, or by other DMBs. So if I go here, you have, and then There is a log analytics script as well, which is available, which you could do this. So actually, if I go for yeah, let me just oh, anyways, that is the script I have with log analytics by which you could do that too. Yeah.
All right. Okay. So the answer
Okay.
is yes, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
all right. There is another question about the latency. Like, what is the latency between those metrics at Cosmos DB? How much time it takes to show it up on the portal?
It is almost instant. You could probably say give it uh, about 5 minutes max, but by and large, it is fairly near instant. Yeah. So
All right. Okay. Yeah. The final question is: can we also see 429 physical partition?
4 to 9 physical partition. Okay. So what do they mean is so
Which partition is
this
affecting those
partition.
four?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think you
Yeah.
already explained, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I showed that. Okay. You could see
Yeah.
that
Okay.
as hot partition. Yeah. So
Okay.
at the
Makes
bottom.
sense.
So
Yeah.
actually,
Those are the questions on the chat.
yeah. So there are some cool stuff over here. So you could see that. That's the short answer, just in the interest
Yep.
of time. But I'm just let me see if I can actually show that. Yeah, partition key range. You see this, how much it has consumed, and subsequently even. So this one, when you have a partition, when you click it, actually you can actually see the key over here. Normalized tool capacity. Okay. Anyways, let's move into an important piece called log analytics. Okay. So so over here you have Azure log. So let me sorry. So out of diagnostic settings, you can create what you can do is you can create a log analytic workspace in Azure portal, and then you can link it up to the account log analytics account. So you have all these categories. Data plane request is for any query that is being fired and against Cosmos DB. If you want only for MongoDB, you can check this. You can Cassandra, Gremlin. If you want to be specific, you could do that, or you could simply go for data plane, in which would cover everything. And then you have query time runtime statistics, which you need to enable if you want the actual query text. Partition key statistics around partition RU consumption or partition key usage stats and so on. Okay. So once you have this enabled, we have the ability to to query this data and configure alerts on top of it and so on. So one example I would like to take is we observed certain spikes at a particular time. So if you want to, for example, when we were looking into the insights portal or insights page over here, so we had um, actually there was a bigger spike earlier, most likely, probably. close to 100% at 12 noon. So I want to know which queries actually did that. So one way, the way to do that is you could. Once you configure log analytics, what happens is you have Azure Log Analytics over here. You go to logs, and inside that you will have these tables that are created. So CDB, Cosmos DB, control plane request, and data plane request, and all these. So if I run this query to find out which queries or were had significant RU. Okay. So at that particular time. So roughly, I didn't specify over here, I just specified last 12 hours or 24 hours. But if you observe, this is in UTC. I'm 8 hours away from UTC. So roughly at about the same time, I I know that this was the collection. This was the RU that was used. Earlier there was a question around okay, what was the app, or you could get the IP address and of of from where it came, client IP address, and so on. So by which you are able to track additional details as well. So, there are quite a few diagnostic queries so that you can leverage. So one of the things that you were asking, partitions. Okay, there was a specific question around 429s, right? So at a particular partition, you can see it from the portal, and in addition to that, and you can see over here saying that using this query, you have the ability to look into those details as well. So all these we can get down to the partition level 2. Blank or, but in some cases, if the query was not actually specifying that partition key, it comes up out as blank. But yeah, this data does go down to the partition level. Okay, so let me just storage. Okay, storage by partition is something you can see. This is from the Azure metrics view. Yes, this throughput at the partition level. You can do that too. So there are some very useful queries that are given. Go through these two, uh, the basic queries and the advanced queries. Use that. In addition to that, I just want to finally, before I let you go, probably just summarize some of this stuff. So, what are the top things that you need to monitor? At query level, you can, it is more of, by and large, it is sometimes reactive. You identify some certain issue and then you get down to query level by other log analytics. So, 4 to 9 is something you need to monitor, something like 5% threshold. If 5% of your requests are facing 4 to 9, take action. 500, 449, that is conflicting rights and so on. Are you consumption going to 100%? Latency less than 10 seconds. Account key is updated if you don't. So that is from the activity log. Uh, Service availability, replication latency about 9 seconds. So logical partition size, and so uh, over 50 GB is something you need to monitor as well. So just leaving you with some thresholds. By no means this is like a absolute value that you need to stick, but just giving you some starting point or some guidelines for you to configure some alerts, configure monitoring, and take action for that. Okay, with that, I'm done. And yeah, sorry for taking a bit more time.
Yeah,
Bye.
I know we are running out of time, but this was a very insightful session with all the details. And also, you showed a few demos on those scenarios that you talked about. Uh, Let me see if there are any questions further. I don't see any other questions on the chat, but we will give a minute to ask any questions.
Yeah, sure.
Yep. Uh, yeah, thanks for sharing this information and also the links. So we will be publishing these links and also the deck after the session ends. With that, we have come to the end of this episode. Thanks everyone for joining in. I don't see any questions coming in, so we can conclude the session. And thanks, Nagraj, for joining us and taking us
No
through
worries.
monitoring. Yeah,
Thank you.
until we catch you again in another session, thanks everyone for joining. Take care.
Thank
Bye.
you.